What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and today we're going to be going over training dummies / the first part of enemies in our first person shooter tutorial. So in this case we will set up some enemies they're stationary for now, but you can place them wherever you want, put whatever mesh you want on them. So you could put an actual humanoid mesh, and they're going to have a little health bar over their head that is stationary with them. If they were to move, the health bar would actually move with them because it is connected to the mesh. It will drain all the way to 0. We don't have it doing anything after that, but you could just destroy the actor, or make the health bar invisible, or repeat, or respawn it somewhere else, whatever you want to do. But this is essentially going to be the initial logic of dealing damage with bullets. Enemy AI, even though we aren't going to start that today, but we're going to build off of what we do today to make that. And it's also just going to be health and damage in general, so for our player as well. Okay, so if we want to get started here, we are using the first-person shooter tutorial up to this point, so there are going to be a few things that we've done that aren't in the initial first-person template from Unreal. So if you're new to the series, I will leave a link to the iCard in the top right corner, which is the very first episode of the first-person shooter tutorial that we did. So if you're not new to the series or you don't care about that, that's fine. I'm just going to show you everything is the same that we've done in base weapon and the FPS tutorial character up to this point. We are going to add a new enemy class. Default enemy is what I called it. So if you go to add new in the editor, new C++ class, I based it off of my character class, but you could actually do a few different ones. You could do pawn, you could do actor, or even player controller. However, because we're not doing AI yet or anything, I think the best one to do it off of is character. Character will have a lot of the functionality necessary that we're going to use later on in the enemy's AI. But we're not going to use any of it today, so I just want to point out there are multiple options you could use. I'd recommend using character, but if you're a bit more experienced with Unreal, you'll know there's other options and even specific AI classes you can use. Not to worry, we can get into that later. Go ahead and make a character class, call it whatever you want. I called mine default enemy. Then open up Visual Studio. It'll open automatically if you have it configured to do so, which I believe is the default in Unreal. And then go to your class. You'll have all this stuff already made except for these two things at the bottom. I've added these. So add a take damage function and a float health. So the health is what it sounds like. It's the health of our enemy. That's what's going to display in his health bar. And take damage is what's going to happen when we shoot him. It's going to remove his health, decrease it. So this is the header file. Take damage takes in a damage float, which is the amount we're going to subtract from his health. Alright, and then when we go to our C++ version, or C++ class I should say, make sure in the constructor of default enemy that the health is set to the maximum value, or that the value you want them to stay at for default. So for me, this is 1 because it's a ratio. Progress bars work off of a ratio by default. So in Unreal, 1 is 100, 0 is 0, and 0.5 would be like 50 health or 50%. In the take damage function that we made the declaration for, all we're going to do is take the health variable we made and minus equals damage, the parameter from the take damage function. Essentially, this is taking the health, subtracting the damage, and setting the health back equal to that result. So health minus equals damage is health minus damage equals health. So it could be written like this. I wanted to point this out because I had a question about this last time. So health minus damage equals health is how this would be written mathematically. If you're familiar with coding but not this setup, you can do health equals health minus damage. This is all the same thing. And this would be underscore damage the way I wrote it. But it doesn't matter. Just as long as this is equal to this, you are good. But there you go. So these are the same thing. But health minus equals damage. So that's what that means, just for anybody who's curious. And there you go. Make sure you build. I'm going to build as well just because I did change some comments and it just would annoy me to say that it's not up to date. So once we're done building this, and I'll just wait for it to show you what the actual result should look like, it will say essentially build completed, and it will tell you if it's a success or a failure. It's going to take its time because we're recording. I could skip it, but let's just go ahead and wait for it to cooperate. There we go. So build 1 succeeded, 0 failed. That's what you want to see. Go into Unreal. Alrighty. So in all the other episodes, we made a bunch of stuff. We made abilities, different ways to display the camera. We're not going to touch any of that today. We're just going to make 2 new things. The enemy BP. Thank you. Appreciate that. The enemy BP and the health bar for the enemy. So leaving everything else we've already touched alone, go ahead and make a new blueprint class. You can make an actor class or a character class. Essentially, this is going to be the exact, this is going to be the blueprint version of the code class we're making. So you can make it either of these and then parent it later, but I'd suggest going to your classes, go to the C++ class you made, so mine is default enemy, and then selecting that. Once you do this, you'll have a class. I called it default enemy BP, default enemy blueprint. Then if you go into this, you'll have begin play and some other stuff. You can get rid of everything but begin play. We're not going to use it for right now. We want to essentially make some logic that is going to make our enemy do what we want. So we have to do a few things to get this started. So first of all, when you make an enemy, he will look like nothing. He will be a little circle here. If you click on viewport, he won't have any mesh or anything. Well, we want a way to display him. So we're going to add component, static mesh. And then once you do that, you'll have this. You can call it something if you want. I just leave it the same. Go to the static mesh and change it. I'm using the cube chamfer, I guess. I don't know. I doubt that's how you say that, but I've never known how to say that. It's just a little sleek look. It rounds the edges out a bit. There you go. Okay, so we're also going to add our health bar, but you won't have this yet. So you can go ahead and add component and add type widget and just add the widget. Call it health bar or leave it alone, doesn't matter. That's just for you. And we're going to go down to widget class and add our health bar once we make it. So we haven't made it yet, so this should say none at the current time for you. What we're going to do is make a widget that is the enemy health bar. So if you go to add new, I say this every time, so I'm sure people are bored of hearing it, but to make a widget, you have to go down to right below sounds, which is what I have displaying now, and go to user interface. And then right below Slate Widget Style is Widget Blueprint. You can kind of see it highlighting at the very bottom of the screen. The way I record, this actually goes off the screen. I have to select it with my arrows. So that's why you can't see it. I apologize for that. But literally, when you go to Add New, go down to the very bottom, User Interface, and go down to the very bottom of that, Widget Blueprint. When you make one, it'll look like this. You can call it whatever you want. I called mine Enemy Health Bar. I dragged in a Progress Bar. And then in the progress bar, which I called health bar, and to drag it in, you literally drag it into the space. I resized my canvas. So normally it'll look something like this. You can resize it to be whatever you want so you know the scales you're working with. You don't have to do that. I'd recommend doing it. It makes it easier to kind of tell what bounds you're working with. So if I'm literally just using this as a health bar, I don't have to worry about anything else. You can actually do it on a very specific scale as well. Make it look nicer. I just kind of eyeballed it. It should be fine for now. If you click on the progress bar, there's 2 things we're going to do. Well, 3 things we're going to do. So 1, we want to set the color of our health bar. Red is the standard, but you could honestly use whatever you want. I think it's white or maybe an ugly gray by default. I can't remember exactly what the default is, but just literally come over to Appearance, fill Color and Opacity, select the color. Then go up to Progress or Percent. Well, go to Progress right here. Go to Percent. It's on 0 by default, so it'll look like this. Make sure you change it to a 1 if you want to see how it looks in the editor. Then there's a button here that says Bind. Click it and hit Create Binding. When you do that, it'll bring you into your event graph. Now, notice I have nothing in my event graph itself. So this is my binding. You'll get brought to this, but I have nothing in my event graph. So not construct, not pre-construct, nothing like that. Also note, I have two functions here. I'm going to delete this one. That was a mistake. I accidentally did it a way that I didn't really enjoy the first time around, so I made a new one. Anyway, just letting you know in case you saw two functions. Don't worry, you only need one. Okay. So, now, this is our binding. So if you go and hit binding off of this and create binding, this is where you're going to get brought. It'll say get health bar %1, or whatever the name of your widget is, %0, I think it will say by default, and I'll give you a return node with the value you want to return. Since the progress bar by default takes a float, the binding will return a float. We're going to have to give it a value. By default, it will look like this and say 0. What we're going to do is get our health bar owner and return our health. Now, we don't have this yet, but that's okay. We're going to go back into our default enemy BP, this guy that we made, go to our widget. We can now choose our widget class. It's just a drop down. Choose your enemy health bar, and it will display somewhere in the scene. For me, it was actually like all the way over here, very far away from my box. So you might want to zoom out a bit and reposition it. You can just go to the transform location here and move him wherever you want. I'm going to undo because I like the spot he was in. But make sure you put him above or wherever you want on the character. You can scale him and make him smaller. Actually, sorry, my fault. The scale doesn't exactly work. It does work, but it doesn't work the exact way you'd want with a progress bar. So you can do this. I'd recommend actually doing this, the draw size. If you want to make it bigger or smaller, you can change the draw size like this. So I found mine was good at 500, 300 draw size, everything 1, and I had to rotate him as well. Yours might be backward when you put him in. Widgets are one directional by default, so if you see it all black instead of what it looks like, you're probably on the opposite side. If you were to come over here, you can see it is lighting up, it's just you're looking at it from the wrong way. You can just rotate it 180. When you do this, it will rotate around the origin, and you can see it there. Alrighty, so there you go. Once you've configured everything the way that you want, and make sure you put this at world. If you put it on screen, it will be more like a HUD element. In this case, we want to apply it directly to the world view. So once you do this, once you put him in here, go to your event graph. It will now be a variable in your components. So you see variables, components. Drop this down if it's not already. You will see your health bar widget, which is this guy right here. That's the same thing. So in begin play, drag this onto the screen, hit get. We've already done it, it's right here, but just showing you. Then drag off of this and type get user widget object. This guy right here. This essentially converts this component to the actual widget. So it is now a widget object. Just a casting thing. You don't really need to know what it's doing internally, but essentially this is going from a widget component to a widget, and then we want to cast our widget to the actual widget type that we are. So our widget type is our enemy health bar. Basically, the short version of that is this gets the widget object, the widget class that we are. This converts it to a widget. We cast it to our widget class, the same thing that we set right here in the widget class drop down, that's the word. Then we want to set our health bar owner. Now you won't have this yet. This is what I was talking about in the widget. So now that we've casted to our enemy health bar, you'll have this. You'll have up to this point. Then what we're going to do is go into our enemy health bar, make a new variable. I called it health bar owner. This is so we can have multiple of these enemies and they're not all sharing off the same health pool, but instead they all have different health. They all have their own health. So make a new variable like this, go to your object type, and we're going to make it an enemy BP. We want to make it the class that we're going to be setting the owner in, this class that we were just working in. We want it to be this class. So once you make your new variable, click on the little pill thing over here and look for your your class that we just made. Default enemy BP, get an object reference, call it whatever you want. Again, mine's health bar owner. I'm going to delete this one because I don't need him. Okay, so that's what he is right here, health bar owner. Now that he's created, and make sure you compile him, otherwise you won't be able to see him. So compile, save. Now that he is created, you can drag off of this, set your health bar owner. So drag off this, do set health bar owner, this right here, and then drag this in. Then you can just get a reference to self and set that as your health bar owner. So self, and drag it into here. So that's what I've done here. Now, that means every single time an enemy is spawned, they will get a health bar, get an actual widget from it, make sure it's the enemy health bar, and then set the owner to be this class that it's attached to. Perfect. There is one other thing we're going to do in here, but let's finish up our health bar. Now that our health bar owner is set, we can just literally drag off of it, because remember, this is an enemy BP now. And you can see default enemy object reference. Now that this is the case, we can search for our health, get health, and drag that into the return node. There you go. Now your health bar should work. As long as you're working on a 0 to 1 ratio, your progress bar will work. Go back to your enemy BP, and we'll finish this up. There's something called event hit, which essentially is anytime a collision occurs. Well, what we're going to do is, on event hit, check if it's the player's projectile, or the bullet we are shooting, and you can check for, you can do a bunch of casts consecutively in case you're shooting different ammo, or if you have like a frag grenade or something like that. And then we're going to call the take damage function. So, type event hit, right here. It's going to be this big guy, he's got a bunch of stuff. This is a bunch of stuff you don't need to know right now. We will do more within the future, like headshot, or you can do, again, like the different types of ammo or different weapons, whatever. All we're going to do is we have, if we're using the first-person template, we will have something called the FPS tutorial projectile, or whatever you called your project. Mine is FPS tutorial. So if yours is first-person shooter project, it'll be first-person shooter project projectile. And this is literally the little yellow bullet. This guy. This thing that I'm shooting. Okay, so all these little yellow guys are that class. So essentially we're doing on hit, other is the object that is collided with this one. So if this is our enemy BP, other is the bullet, the yellow projectile. So we're going to cast it to whatever we want to check if we've collided with. And then if we have collided with this, if the cast succeeds, then we want to take damage. And then you can determine the damage here. Now if you had another class, you could do, you know, rocket, cast 2 rocket, and take damage and increase the damage to 1. Maybe that kills them instantly. So the final result is, once you, make sure you drag some enemies into the scene, I should say that. Right here, so you can drag them wherever you want. This is what he should look like. You can rotate him however you would like, and position him wherever you would like as well. Place him on the ground, save everything, and then compile and play. Now when you shoot this enemy, he will drain health until he is out. Again, he doesn't do anything afterward because we haven't told him to, but now you can actually have training dummies and the initial setup for an enemy. Essentially, this is an actual enemy. Everything that an enemy needs other than intelligence. He doesn't have any AI, so he doesn't do anything, but this is all you actually need in a shooter game to have an enemy. You can change his mesh to be whatever you want as well. So you can also change specific meshes by clicking on one, going to the static mesh, and changing it. I will say some of the default things in the first-person template don't have collision of any sort. So if you change it like to rock, I know is the case, and you go to hit this guy, okay, this one actually does. Sometimes some of the components in the first-person template don't have collision. So if you see your projectiles going right through them, and if you can walk up to them, oh, he doesn't have pawn collision. That's what it was I was thinking of. Well, some of them don't have collision that'll work with your projectiles or your bullets. So if you see your bullets going through them and he's not losing health, maybe change your mesh. It could actually just be as simple as that. Anyway, guys, there you go. So this is how you can make training dummies and the first episode of your enemies tutorial for the first-person shooter. If that helped you, please, please, please subscribe. It's more important than anything else you can do for the channel, and it lets me know that I've done a good job or that you're interested in this sort of content. If you had any issues throughout this tutorial, feel free to come join the Discord. We got a lot of great members, over 100 members, and if you have any issues, I'm more than willing to help, and more than happy to help even. Not just more than willing, you know, it's kind of a drag. Oh, I gotta help this person. No, I'm just kidding. More than willing to help you guys. So let me know if you have any questions in the YouTube comments, or feel free to join the Discord and just join a loving community, and I'll be able to post pictures and videos if necessary to help you out and get your problem solved. Lastly, guys, if you want to come hang out with us on Twitch, hang out with the community, and just have a good time, watch me fail at Dark Souls or Resident Evil, yeah. Come join us on Shawnthebro 27. Someone took my name. Bit salty. Say it every time, but, you know, it's not going away. Still annoying. So, anyway, Shawnthebro 27 at twitch.com. You can come check us out. We do Souls Wednesday, a bunch of Dark Souls games, as it sounds, and Resident Evil Friday, which will convert to Scary Horror Game Friday after Resident Evil is finished. So anyway, guys, I'm Shawnthebro. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Goodbye.